Hi, welcome to Artober Nashville TV and Artober Talks. Today we're discussing funding for the arts, and we are featuring Randy Cohen with American for the Arts, Ann Pope with the Tennessee Arts Commission, Michael McDaniel with the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, and of course myself, Erin Holcomb, with Now Playing Nashville. We know arts funding is a hot topic locally and nationally, especially with the pandemic right now. But I really want us today to kind of take a step back for a second and discuss, what funding for the arts looks like historically. So Ann and Michael, this question is for you guys. So let's kind of give funding for the arts a 50-foot view for our audience, and what does that look like in Tennessee and specifically with your organization? So let's start with Ann.
Historically, we're Tennessee. Are you talking about in the pandemic, or a 50-foot view historically where Tennessee is?
I think historically, let's kind of start with that.
Well, Tennessee ranks in the top 20. I think last year we were 13th for per capita spending for the arts in Tennessee. We're a pretty robust state as far as funding. Much of our funding from our organization, the Tennessee Arts Commission, we have three buckets of funding. We get a state appropriation, we get federal funding through the National Endowment of the Arts, and by far our largest source of funding and public funding for the state of Tennessee for the arts is through our specialty license plate program. We get about 80% of our funding comes from that revenue stream. It has been very steady over the years. We get at about $4.5 million so if someone buys a specialty license plate, most all specialty license plate funding does come to the arts in Tennessee. That has risen over the years. In the last year, we had our highest funding ever, revenue from license plates right at $6 million. So and we then re-grant that money out to the field. And so that came at actually a very opportune time with the pandemic. So our funding source is pretty robust in our state, as I say, in the top 20 in the nation for per capita spending.
Okay. So that's really cool that like anybody can purchase a custom license plate, or I know that you guys have a new design. I say a new design because I have one on the back of my car, but I love that design. That was a couple of years ago where you could register and sign up. And so all of the custom license plates go back to the arts, right?
Yes, 90%, 10% goes to the highway fund, and 90%, it costs an additional $35 for a specialty license plate. 90% of that comes back to the Arts Commission, which we then re-grant that money out. So we also get funding from other specialty license plates, like the Susan G. Komen Fund, for example, is a plate that we get 40% of that funding that we then re-grant out. So it's a great way to support the arts in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Michael, what's kind of like the 50-foot view for arts funding with the Community Foundation?
Well, the Community Foundation's been around for 30 years. We're probably one of the youngest foundations in the United States. And because foundations have been around for decades, the oldest one is over 100 years old. So we've only been around for 30 years. And of that 30 years, I've been there about almost 21 years. So funding for the arts is a little bit different. I might be the odd one out on these two, with Randy and Ann being actually in the arts. We're a little bit from A to Z, arts to zoology. And because of that, a lot of our things are donor-based. So when I first came on, I would say that probably a lot of our funding was around 20% for the arts, because we live in the foundation world, we live in a very diverse Not, we have all different sort of items that donors can actually set up funds for or support in many ways. But many decades ago, we really wanted to be a mechanism to help in the arts community by establishing, as Erin knows, NowPlayingNashville.com. That basically was one of our tools that we could help nonprofits put butts in seats, as we used to call it. So now, through all those years that I've been now associated with, the Community Foundation, I would say, is probably up to about 32 to 35% for the arts. We have lots of faithful donors who give directly through their funds to arts organizations. But when donors come to us, we really kind of sort of help them understand the community needs. They might come to us for one idea, and we want to work with them on that idea. But then when we're open to our conversations, we always bring things that bring the community together. And arts is one of those items that does bring a community together.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement. I know I'm biased for everything that we do on Now Playing Nashville, but that's been one of the components, is that it's a free resource, and that it puts arts and for-profit events on the same playing field, so that someone, who does like the Tennessee Titans, and they might see, oh, hey, there's Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons performing at TPAC, and I really like them, or they're at the Symphony or something like that, and they will at least say, oh, I'm gonna get tickets to that. So that's kind of the goal behind Now Playing Nashville, and thank you, Michael, for mentioning that. I really appreciate it. Randy, one of the things that I kind of wanted to discuss with you is, what are some research trends in arts funding that you've seen across the country?
Well, you just got the 50-foot picture. The 5,500-foot picture is overall funding. Well, things were doing pretty well up until 6 months ago, for arts funding. And of course, now there's just a big, giant question mark for the arts. And I know we'll get into some details on that. But, the National Endowment for the Arts, our federal arts funding agency, is trucking along at $162.5 million. The House actually increased it up to $170 million. The Senate hasn't taken it up yet. And so they'll probably go into a continuing resolution and still be trucking along at 162.5. Ann is one of 50 state arts agencies plus DC and all the territories, and they were on track to be close to $500 million in aggregate this year. We'll see if folks are at the state arts agencies, if they're cut back. But it was a huge growth year, just enormous, up over 30%. And local governments, have been steadily working their way up as well, but they're also a big question mark this year. The U.S. Conference of Mayors, National League of Cities is, because there's a national organization for everything, right? Welcome to Washington. But they're surveying, our city managers, our mayors, and they're like, what's keeping you awake at night? Well, effectively, all of them are looking at, decreased revenues. And I'm almost certain it's probably the same at the state level as well. And, over half are looking at layoffs and furloughs. Over, half to 3/4 are looking at cuts in services, with a lot of those including public safety. So real stress on local government budgets. And, it waits to be seen what, 21 looks like. And even if 21, if there's some clawbacks or some rescissions, that type of thing. So, that's the big government thing. This year in Congress made individual people who filed a short form, when you do your annual taxes, they added a $300 universal charitable deduction. And so that's great news. So now, where before you could just take the standard deduction, now you can actually deduct $300 in charitable contributions. And, and so that, will hopefully elevate private giving. private giving to the arts nationally was $21.6 billion last year. And that was up 12%. So if we're playing jargon bingo, the arts are pro-cyclical. All right, mark your bingo board off, everybody. But what that means is, when the economy is strong, the arts do better than average. But when the economy gets tight, things start to contract more than average. And so that's one of those question marks about how is that going to affect this year, especially as we get to the end of the year, because human services is just the opposite, right? Oh my gosh, these are hard times. Do we need to be providing more funding, to human service issues? And will that affect arts contributions? So there's a lot of national things happening out there.
Yeah, I know that, we're on a fiscal year from January to December. And so we're currently working on our budget for 2021. And so are you seeing that, I'm just curious as to, how arts organizations should kind of plan their budgets for 2021? Should they anticipate more funding or not?
Well, I tell you, the arts have just been devastated. I mean, even taking a step back, the arts have been devastated by this pandemic. Just to give you an idea, 96% of organizations have had to cancel some element of their programming. Nonprofit arts organizations alone have lost $13.1 billion so far to date. They've lost 355 million admissions. So they're seeing just a terrible time. 10% of organizations, and these are just our national ongoing impact surveys, 10% say we're not confident, we have doubts that we're going to even make it to the other side of this crisis. And 10% may not sound a lot, but that's 12,000 organizations nationally. Same thing to artists. 95% have lost some income. 63% are now fully unemployed. The average artist is going to lose $22,000 this year in income. So it's really a devastating time. And many of them are just still closed. The performing arts organizations, and a lot of museums are starting to find their way opening up. But, those big art centers, before they were like, well, maybe spring 21, possibly summer, now maybe fall 21. And I don't know if good old Dr. Fauci, was asked about this recently, and he said, it'll probably be a year before attendees can return to a theater without a mask. Arts organizations are opening up, but it's a challenging time, and audiences are nervous about it too. There's some big national surveys going on. 15% of audiences say, "Hey, you know what? As soon as it's allowed, I'm in there." And they're all about it. Over half have said, on the other side of the pandemic, I'm all in. I will be back, but I'm not going to be the first. I'm going to wait until there's a vaccine, until things settle down a bit. So arts organizations are just in a real fix right now, operations wise. And, that's being reflected in the funding as well. A lot of funders, public and private sector, Michael, Ann, interesting, your take on this, have said, we gave you a grant to do a season of opera, of course you're closed, but they've turned that into operating support grants or something like that, or to help people find a way to open up. And so, that's one of the kinds of changes we're seeing in funding for arts organizations.
Have y'all seen that, like changing that grant to a specific operating expenses?
We haven't yet because our programming starts basically from December and ends in November. So what we've been impressed with all the, not only arts, but all of our programs, is they found some unique ways to do Zoom, our new life, and other virtual type things if they could not get outdoors and do some of their programs or projects. Mm-hmm. Yes, we do have a lot of arts organizations that I have talked with that are supported by the Metro Arts Commission, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and and other avenues. But it's really a path that it's very hard to predict how we're all going to go down, especially with the arts. And like Randy said, the arts have taken a huge hit because a lot of them are indoor events. There's very few that are outdoor events. Even our school activities with the arts are indoor usually. So schools are having to find unique opportunities to do classrooms outside. They're also now doing arts outside. But our grants are programmatic. Very few foundations in the United States do general operating. The only time that the Community Foundation has ever done a general operating is when the economy kind of tanked out in 2008. We took that and rolled it into just general operating at that time. Not saying that we're not looking at that right now, but we are really delighted to hear how some of our nonprofits are being very, very strategic in the way they're trying to continue their programs in different formats. And yes, we have supported them saying that if you need to buy a camera for your program, if it's going to go Zoom, then yes, you can do that this time. So we're still trying to figure out what our next cycle of grants are, how that's going to look at, but hopefully we'll give them an option, whether they still continue as a programmatic or maybe they need general operating. We all know programmatic is part of general operating. We know that. But because of our funding being not as robust because of our years of age with the foundation, we only gave about $2.5 million out last year. But then again, that's arts to zoology. So, it's a little bit kind of a different piece for us.
Ann, are you seeing that?
Yes, I would say that, I would say echo everything that's been said. I mean, certainly the trends that Randy talked about nationally, that, it's been devastating for arts organizations nationally. That's certainly been the case in Tennessee. And we've seen a few organizations that have already closed, they're permanently, that have announced that they're going to not reopen. But I think for us, I would say the word flexible is what we have tried to be as a funder. We do operating support as a funder. Certainly, we have tried every way we can with canceled grants, canceled activities to get that money back out to operating support grantees. And we have done that, and we have any project grant that we can, given we're a public entity, convert into a operating support grants. We've done that, both to sustain the arts and cultural organizations now, but also, planning and how you plan out the other side. We've been, virtual events. We have a student ticket subsidy where about 100,000 kids, are able to go to arts and cultural events or have artists come in the school. We've allowed virtual, anything that we can to allow schools to in different ways provide arts programming. We've leaned that way, and there have been some very innovative things that have happened both in the classroom and arts organizations to connect to the community. So yes, I would say very much following what has been discussed nationally. We're trying to be as flexible as we can. And I would say converting, that's mostly what we've done, has been converting grant by grant to operating support where we can.
Yeah, and I think it's going to help, both the urban and the rural communities. I've seen some different arts organizations kind of adapt. Cumberland County Playhouse, they actually held a play outside, and I thought that was very unique. It was different, and they're up in the Upper Cumberland area, for those that don't know. And So I thought that that was a pretty different scenario. But one thing's, why is the arts so important to communities in these urban and rural settings? And this is for all of you. So whoever wants to go first.
Well, I mean, I'll take real quick. My history with and I don't know if Ann knows this, my name is probably in that building someplace, but I used to work with the Tennessee Arts Commission. I was the director of community development, where Shannon is now.
Wow.
And so my 5 years there, Arts Build Communities was just starting off. And one of our partners was the Community Foundation Middle Tennessee, along with other partners throughout the state. So, my blessings with the Tennessee Arts Commission, that Arts Build Communities was so important to the rural areas. It was help planting the seed of arts. In some of our rural communities, the only art outlet these folks have is maybe through schools, or it's one entity, besides being libraries that put on storybook telling or other kind of festivals. It's so important to our rural communities. Not that the metropolitan areas are not just as important, but they have a buku of donors that are there to help support. In rural communities, that is not the same. And that's my biggest worry right now, is in our rural communities. And I have talked to several arts agencies, people that I've known for years, that they're about ready to close their door. And my job at the Community Foundation as the nonprofit liaison is to help them figure out more outreach to donors, new unique donors, and other places and avenues. But everybody is strapped right now, or every donor is kind of scared, not knowing what steps to take when donating money, unlike grants that we give. So, I too think that being a foundation and have an array of arts, we're gonna lose a large percentage of nonprofits, period. I think that, and Randy, you might know this better, not just in arts and also Ann, but in other agencies, if you don't have your foundation built within 5 years, a pandemic like this will probably shut you down, because it takes 5 to 10 years to really build a good donor base and to get your funding situated as a nonprofit, knowing all the pieces and components of funding that could come from, whether it's federal, state, local, individual donors, all that. And so that's where I'm a little bit more concerned at. And as a foundation, we have to look at everything and what's the best way that we can help them. Foundation is all about holding hands. We hold hands like no one else has held hands before. And before you have to give up that money, because we don't want that money back, we're going to figure out a way to help you. But we're also going to try to figure out the ways that we can manage those monies you get from the Tennessee Arts Commission or for the foundation to leverage them even more so with the donors that maybe don't know where all your other funding is coming from.
Well, and I would add, this is Ann. That in Tennessee, the arts are important. I would say, certainly Randy and Americans for the Arts, on the benefits of the arts nationally. That certainly holds true in Tennessee, but I would say even more so because Tennessee, of all the arts and cultural assets that are in Tennessee that are so iconic. It makes Tennessee Tennessee, and right. That are known, nationwide, worldwide. If you could think of it, from literally one end of the state to the other, from the country, the birthplace of country music in the Storytelling Center, to, you mentioned the Cumberland County Playhouse, and to the Big Ears Festival, the Knoxville Museum of Art in Knoxville, and then Chattanooga, all the Hunter Museum and all the different assets to Nashville, the Country Music Hall of Fame, and then to Memphis and the blues and Stax and all the different iconic arts and cultural institutions that make Tennessee, Tennessee. It's a driver of tourism. And, we saw the state tourism numbers, and which so drive a lot of the economy in the metropolitan areas, as well as in some of the rural areas too, that it's been disproportionately affected versus other industries in Tennessee. So it's important from an economic and tourist perspective, but also it makes the sense of place and making Tennessee who it is, and connecting us. So it keeps me up at night, those organizations that might not make it on the other side of this.
Well, I think that's just illustrates so much the importance of, especially the Tennessee Arts Commission, because, I mean, Michael, you said it, the bigger cities, there's more funding there, and believe me, there's a ton of challenge there. But, if it's not for a state arts agency, like the Tennessee Arts Commission, who's really serving the entire state and trying to lift up all those communities, I think is absolutely vital. And you're right, when people think of Tennessee, you think arts, you think culture, it's a tourism driver. And I think that's the opportunity here for the arts as well. It's funny, the challenge here is like this big question mark is the timeline. I sometimes think, if only this was just another bad recession, It's a bad recession or it's a horrible recession, but we've all been at this long enough. We got a playbook for recessions. It's going to be hard, and we know we're going to cut and adjust and help people sort of exit gracefully. But we don't know now when we can get started up. But here's the thing, two things, that have already been mentioned are just going to be the priorities at our community levels, at our national level. And that is, jumpstarting the economy and reunifying our communities again. And the arts drive both of those things. The arts are kindling for the economy. When we go to an arts event, we're getting out of our homes, we're going and, dinner and a show. And of course, we work with the Arts Commission on these economic impact studies. And, nationally, over $31 per person per event, not including the cost of admission on meals and parking and, babysitting and lodging and, gas to drive across a couple hours to go see a great arts event. Those are dollars going into the pockets of local merchants, right? 70% of the economy is consumer expenditures. And so, this is what that is all about. And so the other side of that coin is, we're self-distancing, we're isolated. There's issues now of loneliness, and mental health has really come to the fore and in a remarkably openly discussed way now. And once again, this is the arts, right? It gets us out to shared experiences in public spaces. It might be a festival, it might be a community mural, going to, see a great music show or something like that. Nobody cares who you voted for. Nobody cares where you practice your faith. We're all here having the same arts experience together. And the research shows the public gets that as well. 72% of the adult American public says the arts unify our communities regardless of age, race, or ethnicity. 73%, the arts help me understand other cultures in my community. And what's amazing about those numbers is they cut across all socioeconomic strata. So it's not an urban phenomenon, or it's not an affluence phenomenon. And in fact, actually, if you look at the cohort of low-income people of color, that's the cohort most likely to strongly agree with those personal and community well-being benefits. And so, the challenge is, how do we make sure in all these communities, big, small, rural, urban, suburban, that we keep the arts alive and surviving so they can really help us rebuild our community, rebuild our state.
I have a question for Ann, actually, real quick. This kind of brings up something that, when we're always trying to apply for our grants and stuff, you guys on Shannon and your team, and y'all mentioned the distressed counties in Tennessee, and kind of like, are you finding that a lot of times in those distressed counties, it's just the schools that have arts, or there's no arts organizations or arts councils or theater groups or anything like that there? or, you know, or how is that configured? I'm just curious.
I would say in the rural communities, it's not a one size fits all. Often there are some arts organizations in rural communities, but I would say, and we fund a lot of them, but I would say more often than not, you have an entity that has a broader focus, much like the community foundation, that in essence acts as the arts and cultural hub of that area. Often, though, they see themselves as not arts. You know, it's more, I think of there's a broom making festival in West Tennessee in Selmer that they, in essence, they don't necessarily see themselves as art, but that festival and the nonprofit that puts it on really is the arts and cultural hub in that county. And so I would say, so we fund, you know, there are libraries that really take on in a rural community that they're the arts and cultural hub. There are some schools, you're exactly right, that they're really both the hub for the students and also they, you know, put on a festival or activities that the whole community can come to. So we really try from a funder standpoint, you know, that grassroots fund the arts where they happen in rural communities. And we started many years ago, what we call our Targeted Arts Development Initiative. And it's basically our strategy to fund in all 95 counties in Tennessee. And wherever it happens, we reach out and try to build capacity. And since we started that program, this is our 7th year of being in all 95 counties. And so we try through a variety of mechanisms to kind of reach rural communities, including distressed and at risk, where the arts happen.
Yeah.
You know, that's a great, I was just going to comment because I loved hearing that and how you describe it. And once again, you know, there's actually amazing data that underscores that as well. So our big national surveys, 72% of the American public said, yeah, I went to an arts event last year, but almost the same percentage, 70% said, yes, I had an arts experience at a non-arts venue, in a library, in a hospital, you know, public art in the built environment, in the schools. And that, I think, is also just a great opportunity for the arts, right? Because, you know, the more experiences people have, the more they're going to want it, you know, sort of, it's how you build demand. I mean, so I always, you know, if someone gives me my stack of money someday, it's going to be, you know, how do you make the arts unavoidable in our communities? And so that's just such a great example. So I just wanted to sort of cheerlead.
Yeah, it's been incredible to kind of see. I'm originally from Hardeman County in Tennessee, and so that's one of the distressed counties, or considered one of the distressed. But when I was in high school, I was in public school, and so we, you know, often travel to Memphis or Jackson to see the arts, whether at the symphony or, you know, what is it? I can't even remember the name. I haven't lived in that area in so long. But a performing arts center in Memphis. And so, you know, I just remember that, but now they have their own theater group. And I remember that starting when I was in high school, and I was very big into theater. And so I went out for one of their roles that they had there, but they didn't have their own building at the time. And so now they have their own space and they do all these elaborate productions. And now we have a historic theater downtown that has movies and music and, you know, different things like that. And then music on the square. So it's nice to see how the arts is being funded in the rural areas. And so I'm very appreciative to that. And so that it's making an impact on generations to come.
And I would just add to that real quick to the rural communities more and more are recognizing the arts as a way to drive traffic downtown, as a way to that sense of place that separates them from from other communities, and are doing like you said, like having a downtown theater that has events where all the businesses are staying open late and having activities. We're seeing that as a strategy for rural communities. I mean, that is on a significant rise. I mean, it's been really wonderful to see.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to kind of, the Tennessee Arts Commission's goal in funding all 95 counties. And so I really think you guys are making an impact. I'm definitely seeing that in my hometown. So I appreciate all the work that you're doing. I kind of want to go back to the pandemic real quick. Are you guys seeing, and this is for all of you, are you seeing more resources available to arts organizations and artists, or are you seeing less? And kind of, can you describe that a little bit?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of, when I think more or less, I'm thinking like in the aggregate, and it's like, I'm not sure how it's stacking up yet. But there have been a lot of artist relief funds that have been developed at local levels, state levels, and national level. So people are definitely recognizing, artists and these arts organizations are an asset for our community. They're the most severely hit, amongst the workforces in this country. We've got to do something to, maintain their viability, enable them to survive here. So I'm really seeing a lot of those across the country. How those go for the long run is another question. The arts actually didn't do too bad in the PPP and the CARES Act and everything. There were about 9,900 nonprofit arts organizations that got a PPP loan that converts into a grant for $1.8 billion. Now, that really lags the $13.1 billion that I said in losses. And hopefully, there'll be more of those opportunities in the future. So that's another funding source. Artists, the arts community really rallied to make sure artists were eligible for the federal unemployment, pandemic unemployment insurance. So there have been these things coming in sort of non-traditional ways from the sides that we're seeing.
I would and to bring it to add what Randy is saying is, I would say what we hear from our arts organizations is everything is so unknown. And so a lot of them have been doing budgets, not too far out and doing it in phases. And that is certainly what we have had to do from a state level, not knowing what the state's revenues are. We had to, at the Tennessee Arts Commission, we had to pass a budget that was flexible, that we could do in phases and focus on the resources we knew we had, that we could get that funding out. But I mean, our goal as a funder is to get as much funding to our core, which is arts and cultural organizations, because we know fundraising is down. We know that local government budgets have been hit or at best questionable. So we're trying as a funder to get as much money to stabilize the field. And as the NEA chair, Mary Ann Carter, says, to help stabilize arts organizations so they can come out the other side. So we're doing as much as we can. And so I would say from the Tennessee Arts Commission, we put, from canceled grants, canceled activities like our conference, we took money out of reserves for FY20, which ended June 30th. We put $1 million more out into the field than we did in the prior year. In FY21, which began July 1st, we'll match that $1 million more, plus an additional the NEA CARES funding of a little over $500,000 will be about $1.5 million more dollars than we had the prior year. It pales in what the demand and the need is. I mean, it doesn't even scratch the surface, I know, because you have organizations that depend, you know, that their 70, 80%, even 90% of their budget was earned revenue that stopped and went to zero immediately. But that's our goal for this in the pandemic, is recognizing that revenues are in flux and really an unknown for these arts organizations, to try to get as much as we can out, given our unknowns at the state level too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, that's incredible what you guys have done. Y'all also have, I believe, Tennessee Arts Commission has a page on their website for resources that are available for funding for arts organizations and artists. And I believe Americans for the Arts has the same thing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, we sure
And
do.
I just do a shout out to Randy real quick. We've put, we did try to have a kind of a one-stop shopping on our website with everything COVID related. And we put a lot of links and published what Americans for the Arts. You've done a great job with the fire hose that you must have been drinking out of during this unknown time. And so I just want to do a shout out, Randy, for the great job that you did to get information out. That changed quickly. I mean, daily at a time, it almost seems. So I just want to thank you for all that you did.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Ann. It's an incredible group of people. And as an arts service organization, now's the time, so it's really, it's amazing to see a field rally and innovate, and the way some more arts organizations are, trying to make lemons into lemonade, right? And so 2/3 of organizations in our surveys, and this is like surveys of 18,000 organizations, over 60% are now doing online content, social networking content, so they're really adapting in that way. Now the research says so far only like 13% of people are have crossed a paywall yet, so how do you commodify that? How do we turn that into, revenue and income? But, that certainly is one thing. And then also a similar percentage of arts organizations and artists are partnering and reaching out and connecting with their communities. And Erin, this gets to a question you were, asking earlier. A vibrant arts community provides cultural benefits. It delights us. It creates the communities, we want to live in. It gives us pleasure and inspiration. But, as we talked about, it's good for the economy. It's good for our, mental health and personal well-being. We talked about arts education. The research is there. A young person with an education rich in the arts is performing better academically, better grades, better test scores, lower dropout rates. Healthcare. So I've got an arts background. I also have a medical research background. And, I can tell you, when the arts are part of our healthcare and our healing, shorter hospital stays, fewer doctor visits, less depression, saves money. So, the arts are really a vital piece of a healthy community. And, it's interesting watching the arts organizations connect to the non-arts entities and partners in their communities to try and lift the whole community up. And I certainly hope, over time that turns into more contributed support or more earned income. But the arts are on the right side of what needs to be done in our communities.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think I was kind of looking through all my questions, and you guys, we've kind of touched on everything just kind of through our conversation, and I've enjoyed, everything that we're discussing today. But for time purposes, I do want to ask one thing from each of you. I would love for you all to name one reason someone should support the arts today. And I'm actually going to share my screen right now and pull up. Randy had sent a very nice 10 reasons to support the arts in 2020. And
there it is.
Yeah. So
Nice.
yeah. So if you guys want to, if you'll go around, Randy, let's start with you.
There's so many good reasons. You know, I mean, arts are fundamental to our humanity. They're fundamental to us. You know, they're part of a healthy individual. They're part of a healthy community. And well, it's in that first couple sentences I have there. You know, they ennoble us, they inspire us. And these are benefits for personal and community well-being that persist in good times and in bad. And so if you care about culture, you care about healthy communities, you care about people in society, you need to support the arts. That needs to be part of your giving portfolio because an investment in the arts is an investment in everything that you feel is important.
All right, Michael, what's your one reason?
Well, I mean, arts has been in my life ever since I can remember. And I'm old, but I can certainly remember back when I was a very young child, having arts as part of my life, and it's always been a part of my life. I think arts brings such a diverse tapestry of our community together. And it's a way to build inner spirit. It's a way to share in the good of all, whether it's good or bad. But I mean, I think arts is just something that visually and can't think of the other word I wanted to use, but it's just, it really enhances one's individual soul. And I do believe that every citizen has had at least one or more experiences in the arts. And if they didn't, then maybe they're under a tree. But, I can't say that for sure because it just depends on, in our rural areas. I mean, we have some rural areas that just have no cultural diversity in them at all. There's no city to them. I mean, it's just basically a bedroom community, and that's it. But I think it brings just so much impact financially as well as to well-being of all. And collaboration in the arts, if anybody talks about collaboration, I think arts are a big piece of that. And so that is part of our goal looking forward. Is the Community Foundation is always loving to have collaboration. And a lot of times, because of my art background, I'm always going to bring arts into it in some way or another. Whether it's arts and animals, it's arts and tree huggers, it's arts in the river compact. I mean, there's so many pieces that the arts really can tie things in. Arts are just, I can't say enough about arts, and I'll always participate and have arts in my soul.
Anne?
Well, let me first just say to Michael and to Erin how fortunate this state is, and Middle Tennessee in this state, that we have a community foundation, first of all, as strong as you all are, but also that sees arts as a part of its mission. And I just want to do a shout out just how fortunate this state is and Now Playing Nashville. That is having a one-stop shopping where you have multiple counties, arts and cultural events tied into other community events, has certainly benefited every arts organization that's on Now Playing Nashville, but the state as a whole. So I just want to thank you all for what the Community Foundation has done. And so I would say echo everything that's been said about why arts is important. I'll pick a different one and talk about how, particularly in this uncharted water that we're in, and that nobody has ever faced anything. I like what Randy said we have a playbook for the recession, but we don't, we've never seen anything like this where we don't know an end, the ending time, and we don't know what the long-term effects are going to be on our population as a whole, or, you know, certainly in the arts and culture. But I would say the silver lining in this has been you know, you have on here number 6, arts spark creativity and innovation. We have seen in Tennessee so much innovation and creativity in responding and leading from the arts and culture sector in Tennessee. It's been incredible. You know, you mentioned Cumberland County Playhouse, Erin, having outdoor concerts, you know, all these different things, that the virtual programming. I know the Belcourt is doing drive-in movies, and all these different, we're seeing all across the state and in rural communities too, of how people are, you know, in some of the first community events that people have done have been socially distanced outside, or virtual coming togethers that people have done that have been created almost overnight by arts and cultural, you know, by artists and arts and cultural organizations in Tennessee. So it's been exciting to see that. I think the challenge is going to be, a lot of it has been non-revenue generating, and organizations are going to have to figure out how they can operate, you know, in a way that continues to let them operate. But it's been, I think, a great resource for communities, rural and urban, across Tennessee, in you know, living in this world that we are right now. So, and I think that impacts us all from a health standpoint, and just in every positive way. So arts are important in this state, as they are everywhere, and I'm very hopeful that that we're going to come out the other side in a stronger way than ever.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a Tennessean, you can go out and support the arts by purchasing a specialty license plate. That can be your contribution in giving back to the arts in your community, as well as the state of Tennessee too. Do you guys have anything else you want to discuss before we kind of wrap up here today?
I just want to say Tennessee is one of the model license plates. States across the community are always trying to figure out, how the heck are they doing that? And I love, because even in these troubled times, it's a dedicated stream of income. Still got to buy a license plate and register your car, right? You know, so even in a pandemic. But this has been delightful. Tennessee is a great arts state and great arts leaders. And so it's really been my pleasure to be able to sit with you all today. So thank you for that.
Same here.
Thank you. We've really, the Tennessee Arts Commission, we've been really blessed to have good partners in Americans for the Arts and the Community Foundation.
Yeah.
So we greatly appreciate the time to be here, and love that both of you plug the license plate program. It is a very unique entrepreneurial way, if you know, for arts to support each other, to buy a plate. And I just want to thank everybody for supporting that funding stream in Tennessee. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Well, I want to say thank you, Randy, Ann, and Michael, for being a part of this Artober Talks segment today. Don't forget to tune in each week during October for Artober TV, Artober Learning Labs, and more Artober Talks conversations. I want to give a big shout out to the Tennessee Arts Commission for assisting in funding for Artober Nashville, as well as Ryman Hospitality's Foundation. And if you have any questions from today's Artober Talks session, please comment below and we will get back to you all. Again, thanks for being here, and I hope you guys found this Artober Talks helpful.
Thanks.
We need to do more. We need to do more art talks.
Yes, for sure.
I'm in.